Good morning and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, education, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment to like and share this program, whether you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, or you're listening to us on Apple Podcast or Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it. Make sure your friends know that you're listening to us so that they can join the conversation as it is happening. Also want to encourage you, go to fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. Know that every penny that you spend at FPC Gear will actually go right back to FPC and into the fight for your right to keep and bear arms. When you go there, you can find T-shirts, you can find coffee mugs, you can find hoodies, you can find all sorts of things that will allow you to outwardly express your support for the Second Amendment, once again, while knowing that you're actually doing it with your dollar. So support the Second Amendment and look good doing it. Go to fpcgear.com. All right. We all know that when it comes to news, we're always trying to find legitimate sources, right? We know that there's bias in media. Unfortunately, it's just become a thing where you just have to know that whatever source you're going to, there's going to be some sort of a bias there. Now, when one is looking for information relating to investments in particular, one would hope, because once again, we're talking about retirements, we're talking about your retirement account, your savings, whatever it is, your home, you're making key decisions based on the information that is provided to you. And so you want to know that at the very least, that the information that you're getting from those sources is actually unbiased. But unfortunately, there's at least one source that I believe can no longer be trusted, and that would be MarketWatch. MarketWatch actually recently did a piece, and unfortunately it was relating to, guess what? Firearms and quote-unquote gun violence and defensive use of firearms that can only be slated as, well, I guess you could, if you're going to be polite, you could call it biased. If you want to be honest, it's either lazy reporting or it's out and outright bias and lies. And it has to do with an entity that I'm sure that you folks are familiar with, and that is the Gun Violence Archive. Now, the Gun Violence Archive is an entity that supposedly tracks all shootings, all gun incidents. Let's clarify. Gun incidents is what they call them. But they track all gun incidents that occur in the United States, supposedly so that they can, the information can be out there and they can talk about all of the quote-unquote gun violence that is taking place. Now, in their recent report, the one that was published once again at MarketWatch, they noted that there was a huge number of gun incidents. So far in 2018, they're saying that there have been 42,220 incidents involving firearms, including 11,984 deaths in the United States relating to firearms, just so far in 2018. Now, what they're also stating is that the number of times in which a firearm was used in self-defense, well, they're saying that was in only about 1,478 cases, or as they like to note, 3.1% of the total incidents. Now, one would listen and think, oh, wow, this must be good statistics, right? I mean, where exactly do they get their information? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And so let's talk about whether or not they are, in fact, accurate. Now, the Gun Violence Archive, and this is information directly from their homepage, them telling us who they are. The Gun Violence Archive here notes that they were established to carry on the work of Slate.com's 2013 toll of deaths by gun violence. So I think the first thing that's important to note about this is, once again, where it initially came from, and that is Slate.com. And anyone who has ever read Slate.com knows, first of all, they are one of the most anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, left-wing websites out there on the internet. There is absolutely no way that anyone with any credibility whatsoever can look at Slate.com and not recognize that they are in fact biased, and that much of the reporting that comes from them is wholly inaccurate and slanted, or at least the data that they seek to provide only supports, well, it supports their particular perspective, in this case, that they want to, take away the right to keep and bear arms. Now, when they took it over, it says here the GVA took over the reins in 2014. The mission was expanded to also look at the tens of thousands of injuries and other acts of gun violence. The overall goal of GVA is to provide the best, most detailed, accessible data on the subject and add clarity to the ongoing discussion on gun violence, gun rights, and gun regulations. Now, the interesting thing is that, once again, think about how exactly they're going about doing this, because one of the things that they're saying is, well, they want to provide all this accurate information on gun rights and gun data, on gun regulations, but the website doesn't say anything about gun regulations and what gun regulations are in place in the places where this violence is happening. It doesn't tell you whether or not there are magazine capacities, whether or not there are restrictive gun laws, whether or not individuals have the ability to be able to conceal carry. None of that information is made available via their website. So I don't know exactly what gun laws they are referring to. In addition, once again, they say they want to talk about, they only want to discuss gun violence. But here's an interesting thing. In their numbers, they include things like, they include defensive use of firearms. That's included in those numbers of shootings that actually took place. Also included in the number of shootings that took place are incidents where law enforcement shot a criminal. So a criminal who probably had a gun, may or may not have had a gun, whatever, but they're in the commission of a crime, they are shot by law enforcement. Those numbers are included in their numbers. So how is this about gun violence if you're also going to include that? Now, the other thing is they want to talk about gun rights, but yet there's the only numbers that they include have to do with, the defensive numbers that they have included there are wholly inaccurate. How do I know that? Because just recently, as recently as a month and a half ago, it was reported that the CDC had information data verifying over 2 million incidences per year of firearms being used in self-defense. Now, I could be wrong, but if there are over 2 million incidences of firearms being used per year, that the 1,400 or a little under 1,500 that they're reporting thus far in 2018 in their study might be slightly inaccurate. Now, why would it be so inaccurate? Well, I'm glad you exited that question, because we're going to take a look at it. Let's take a look a little bit about their methodology. Now, GVA began with the goal to provide, they say here, a database of incidents of gun violence. To that end, we utilize automated queries, manual research through over 1,200 media sources, aggregates, police blotters, and police media outlets, and other sources daily. So, in other words, they are relying wholly or mainly on the media to provide all of this information. So let me ask you a few questions. So number one, so if a person utilizes their firearm to defend themselves, but they don't actually shoot anybody, what are the chances that that is going to make the news? I know you know. Miss Chang, who wrote this article, she doesn't know. She clearly doesn't know, because she didn't stop to think. She didn't stop to think about, well, gosh, gee, I wonder, And even then, even if you went then straight to the police, how many times would a person, if they've used their firearm in the commission of a crime, would they actually call to report it to the police or have it reported to the media? I mean, the ignorance that is included here, the fact that they would specifically not include key data because, well, they don't know. And once again, this doesn't even include all of the information about all of the various different incidents. So anyway, I just think that it is vitally important. It's vitally important for each and every one of us. If we're going to look at entities like this, like MarketWatch, right? Because see, MarketWatch, well, supposedly, they're supposed to be trusted. According to one outlet that I looked up, and I tried to look up to see, what did people think of MarketWatch? Did they believe that MarketWatch was slanted? Did they believe that MarketWatch wasn't slanted? And, and I came up with this particular entity that basically said, well, the organization specifically deals with media bias. And according to them, MarketWatch is relatively, they're relatively trustworthy. They're at least, they tend not to be biased. But in this particular case, probably because this didn't include financial information, they didn't care. They didn't even care to check on the viability or the credibility of the entity, or at least this reporter didn't. Ms. Chang decided she wasn't even going to bother to check on the credibility of the entity in which they were reporting. And on top of this, by the way, interestingly enough, MarketWatch actually did a piece themselves on the reliability of media and how biased it was. Now, needless to say, in their particular piece, they did not bother to include themselves because I think they are above reproach. So with this, I'm just going to throw this out there. And this is to Ms. Sue Chang. This is a message directly to Ms. Sue Chang. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Ms. Chang. You either have come at this from an anti-gun perspective, and I really do believe that you are being from San Francisco. I firmly believe that you are an opponent to the right to keep and bear arms. And I know you probably don't see yourself that way. But if you are going to as a journalist, put out information that is incorrect, make absolutely no attempt at all to verify the credibility of that information, then you are in fact opposed to the Second Amendment. It's either that or you are just a lazy reporter. Now, I firmly believe that either one could be true. Either way, maybe you should consider another career if you are not going to bother doing your job correctly. I don't know. You say in your profile that you write mostly on financial and investment data. Well, let me just be honest with you. If this is how you go about doing your job, I know now that I cannot trust MarketWatch to provide me unbiased, factual information any longer. And that's all because one reporter and an editorial staff that, by the way, didn't bother to check and make sure that this reporter was doing her job. Let's just say that it only takes one apple to sparrow. One bad apple to ruin the barrel, spoil the barrel, whatever the saying is. Anyway, but I wanted you folks to know and kind of have this information, and quite frankly, Ms. Chang, to help educate you, so that you know and understand that just because you go and you look up something on a website and they seem to have a lot of cool databases on their website, does not mean, number one, that they know what they're talking about, and it also does not mean, number two, that they are unbiased. Just saying. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in and taking a moment to like and share this program and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. Because as I like to say, we are the home in the fight for civil rights. You got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.